Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Steward is transforming agriculture by equipping regenerative farms and food systems with the capital they need to grow. As a mission-driven financial partner, Steward works closely with agriculture businesses to scale their operations, improve the health of their lands and waters, and bolster farm-to-regional food systems. To date, Steward has provided over $15 million in business loans to fund 75 unique projects backed by more than 1,500 participating lenders. Steward is proud to be a certified B Corp. Seek financing or support a loan campaign at gosteward.com. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with yet another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. Today, my guest is Sasha Miller, who is with Purplebrown Farmstead. She started the farmstead with her husband in 2016 as part of the Countryside Initiative program in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. It's a 12-acre certified organic, diversified farm designed and managed using permaculture principles. The main products include pork, mushrooms, perennial vegetables and fruit, eggs, and more. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So share a little bit about how you got started farming.
We did not grow up farming, me and my husband, neither one of us. And we were living in Chicago at a time when our kids were born, and we were really at a fork in the road, if you will. And we decided to take a sharp left and move back to Ohio. And it was really an opportunity for me to kind of restart and refresh my professional career. So it was really a culmination of my background, but farming just seemed like a great intersection of my professional and personal interests, and a really great way to raise a family and teach our kids kind of the values that we really want them to grow up with. And really farming is a way for me to pursue community development and economic development in a really healthy way that helps to support our environment as well. So that was really the precipice, and we looked for farmland, for a long time all over Ohio. Land access is a big issue, and we definitely felt that. But this program here in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park is really unique. We actually have a long-term lease from the national park for these 12 acres. This is a historic farmstead. But for all intents and purposes, we just get to operate it as a private business. But it is a unique partnership, and we are leasing the land, and it really provides us an opportunity to really demonstrate much more regenerative practices of agriculture and how conservation and farming can really go hand in hand to have a positive impact on each other. And, the type of community that's built around good food and small farms is just always a positive. So getting into farming for me was really, I love to be outside. I love to work with my hands. I've always wanted to garden and, kind of help to protect our environment, hands-on. And farming seemed like a really great way to get into that and also accomplish all these other goals.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what ages were your kids when you started the farm?
Oh, let's see, about around 4 or 5 years old.
Okay. So pretty young. And so let's talk through, as you built the farm, what kind of things have changed about it?
So I got my permaculture certificate, right as I was putting together the proposal for this farm. So it was really an opportunity to do a full-on permaculture design on these 12 acres. So that was really the approach. And with that in mind, you really start by designing the system and putting in some of the bigger pieces, really thinking about water and the health of the water system on the farm and the health of the soil on the farm. And really, what are those pieces that you put into place first? And then you kind of fill in the details. So in the first 5, we've been here, so 6.5 years now. And it really feels like it's finally starting to take shape. We've got about 2 or more acres planted in fruit trees with a productive herbaceous understory. We have a pond here on the farm that we've been rehabilitating. It was quite overgrown when we got started. So that's been, a work in progress. And we have pastured animals over the 12 acres. So we really are beginning to see the difference in the types of growth we see in those fields. We're starting to see, the fruit trees are just beginning to produce. And so some of that is beginning to happen. The asparagus harvests have been abundant now for a couple of years, and that feels pretty great. And otherwise, I finally feel like we're kind of getting to the groove of things.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And then you also opened a store in the local town, correct?
Yeah, Peninsula is right in the heart of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And it's a historic little charming village, I should say. And we, in 2020, I guess since we started the farm, really, we always had like a little farm stand of just our products in the barn. And we always did farmers markets and had a couple of wholesale accounts here and there as we were getting started. But in 2020, everything kind of shifted. And as everybody else, we also adapted and kind of figured it out as we went along. So our first step was really when the farmers market was canceled, was to open up a farm stand in our barn kind of more actively. So we invited some of our farmer friends that we'd been chatting about doing cooperative things with, to sell some of their products in our barn. And, week to week, more folks kept coming. And we, by the end of the year, had 12 or so vendors and, hundreds of customers come in because we are kind of situated near the markets and near suburbs. And that winter, we were kind of scratching our head thinking, well, we can't keep doing this in the barn anymore. I mean, we do overwinter the pigs down below, and, it's a working farm. So having like a full-on store on the farm really was kind of not matching up. So we knew something had to shift, and we saw this place was for rent in Peninsula and just jumped on the opportunity. It seemed like a really natural next step for the farm store to have, be much more accessible, have proper plumbing and electricity.
Yeah.
And really kind of give local organic food the platform that it deserves. So it's a charming little store. And now we've been open there just over a year. And besides our products, we have 60 producers within 60 miles whose products we sell there. So it is like an ultimately local food store. And it's been a really fun project to work on for sure over the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's quite charming with the painted red like a barn. So is it still red?
Yeah, it's a historic little building. It was the original freight depot. So it's right by the train depot where folks get to ride the scenic railroad, and it's like just a big old freight barn.
Very
now
cool.
Filled with food.
Yeah, that's awesome. So talk about you've got 60 different vendors in there. How did you discover all those? Was that just a process of starting to reach out to local food community and say what we're trying to build, and people came to you?
Well, it was really an organic process. I mean, I am at the very heart, like a local foodie, right? So I'm really ingrained in the culture and in the community of local food here. So I really personally do know all of our vendors and producers. And we are really blessed here in Ohio with how much agriculture we have and how many foodies we have on the production side. There's plenty to choose from. We really try to focus on, small sustainable operations, and we really look at organic products and local ingredients as part of the producer supply chain and all of that. So yeah, I mean, I was, a shopper at the farmers markets and the co-ops and all that. And then I was a vendor there as well. And, it's just kind of been growing with me, and I've been growing with it. But we always welcome, I don't know everybody personally in Ohio, so we always welcome more producers to reach out to us. And we have an easy form on our website for folks that want to submit their information. And then we, follow up with questions and see if it's a good fit. But the more the merrier. We really want to make sure that we're useful for all of the consumers and all of the producers, that we can make, we're nobody's silver bullet, we're nobody's sole income, but we like to be valuable for all of our folks.
Mhm. Now, with this, do you do consignment? Do you do a general markup that you use, or how do people be in your store?
Yeah, so we considered, in my past, I've worked with some food co-ops, models before and things of that nature. But for this, we really considered the best approach, and we decided it's to take on that responsibility of really curating and owning the stock, and being responsible for presentation and for the sales, and not burden the farmer with yet another thing they have to worry about. And so we just straight up buy product from all of our vendors, and then we resell it.
Gotcha. That makes sense. What kind of POS system are you using in the store?
Clover.
Clover. Okay. And you found that superior to the Square because of?
Oh, I think it's a half a dozen of one, six of the other. Everybody
Okay.
can make that kind of personal choice for themselves.
Okay. So yeah, just whatever you kind of works for you.
Yeah, that's kind of what we identified as the best option for us.
Mm-hmm. Talk about staffing for the farm. So obviously you've got the farm, that's its own thing, but now you've got the farm store. How do you split and put your time?
That's a good question. I mean, we really operate on a shoestring budget, in that we don't have investors, we don't have anybody's money but our own to spend, and we don't have much of that. So it's really rub two sticks together and make something of it as we go. So we really don't have much staff. We have no staff on the farm. I'm the sole operator, with I should say, friends and family lending a hand here and there seasonally, and volunteers kind of coming in over the years. But the store, we do operate with a small staff, and so we've been open just over a year, and we've had just a couple part-time employees, and that's about it.
Okay, gotcha. Talk through the seasonality of the store. You've been open for a year. Have you seen a seasonal ebb and flow with customers? What seems to be the busiest?
Yeah, we're still learning as we go. I mean, 5 years down the line, I think it'll be a lot easier to see a really strong pattern. But we do know a lot of folks have been really shopping with us since we've been at the farmers market, and then they shopped with us in the barn, and now they're coming to the store. And but we are at that point where folks are finding us even, new. We still get new people coming in the door now, and it's just been a lot of word of mouth. And, like I said, we don't have a big marketing budget and things like that. So it really has been just kind of the community spreading the word, and folks showing up, and then, liking what they see, liking what they eat. So everybody seems to find a reason to come back. Some people really love our breads. Others people come back just for the yogurt and the milk, and some people are there for the mushrooms and the microgreens every week fresh. So, and the meat freezer is full and always changing out. And so everybody kind of finds a niche, and we get a lot of shoppers, coming on a weekly basis, and that number is growing. But we do the park attracts a lot of visitors. So it's really kind of great opportunity to showcase the best of Northeast Ohio agriculture for all the folks coming to visit the Valley. And we get a lot of really positive feedback from folks, and we're just kind of building for that. All the positive feedback we get, and that's kind of what we're leaning into, is growing those threads. So, the seasonality has been really fun, because people have been, in fact, learning, oh, the strawberries are done for the season. Well, that's good to know. Or, in the wintertime right now, we don't have any goat cheese or goat milk in stock, because all the goats are kidding around Ohio. So it's really fun for folks to kind of learn the seasonality of food, and for us to help introduce those ideas in ways they hadn't really considered before.
Now, with that shoestring budget, talk to me about some of the innovative marketing you've done. I see you've done some bike rides and some sharpening. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's all about collaboration. We want to be useful, we want to be relevant, and we just really want to participate with our community for all the things that we think folks ought to do more. So encouraging people to get outside and ride their bikes this winter, and then having a cup of hot soup that's made with local organic produce. After that is if we don't, cold day, we didn't get a lot of riders showing up, but at least it sparked an idea for people that, hey, it's a sunny day, I could ride my bike too. But it's been a lot of collaboration. We've worked with a lot of events in Peninsula with the Main Street program there, and we're part of the Countryside Initiative program. So like us, there's 9 other farms in the national park. So wanting to collaborate and work with folks in that way, and yeah, just staying relevant. But really, marketing it's not my forte. It's not kind of the way I think of the business. For me, it's about community development. So I know that marketing is like really essential, but I always struggle with that piece of how, am I really doing it right?
Yeah. Now let's talk back to the farm a little bit here. So with the farm, what are the main things that you produce? Because you got a wide variety.
Yeah, so I mean, really what we're doing is we're putting in like a perennial food forest, and into that goes a lot of preparation. So we don't have a perimeter fence yet. We just use kind of temporary like 3D little fencing. So with the deer pressure that we have, I'm not trying to plant more acres and fruit trees until we get a perimeter fence up. But the couple acres that we have planted, it's really just been observing if our system has, if it's the right way to do it, right? Like do it small, test the system, and then scale it out after that. So we have a really diverse mix of apple trees and pear trees, a lot of berry bushes planted in between, a lot of herbs and tubers planted. I'm a big comfrey lover, as every permaculture folks do. So we've got a lot of that spread out around, and really just observing to make sure that this is the good way to organize an orchard. So we've got about 2 to 3 acres of that. And I've raised a lot of poultry, specifically like ducks. So I ran a lot of ducks in that orchard, and things of that nature. But well, the orchard is like the long-term piece, right? Like that's really takes years to establish. So in the meantime, I did mess around with some annual production, but I realized it was just, there's other farmers doing that better. And it's something that's really needs, full attention. So what really worked for me to do more of was the pork. I really like raising pigs. I've been doing that for all this time. And then I leaned into mushroom production. I toyed around a little bit with like indoor growing, but again, that's that takes a lot of attention and focus, and other folks are doing that better at this point. So I really have been doing a lot more of outdoor growing on oak logs, shiitake mushrooms. We've been doing that this whole time, and then we have really improved our soil in the orchard by inoculating and then harvesting every year the wine cap mushrooms. So those are kind of our 2 big mushroom products, and along with the pork. And then in past years, while we weren't starting the store, I was doing a lot more poultry, and I really look forward to getting back to that once the store is up and running. But we do have a big pond, and we've got a big orchard, and we've got a lot of bugs. So it seems like a match made in heaven to raise the duck eggs, which around here is a really good product. There's not too many farmers doing that, and there's a bit of a market for it.
Yeah. All right. So you said a lot there. I want to break that down a little bit because I found some of that very interesting. All right. Wine cap mushrooms. Are you mulching all the trees with wood chips, and then you're inoculating the wood chips, or just inoculating the ground?
Yeah, I would do wood chips. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not like the whole orchard floor, but there's like targeted areas. We have a couple like swale and berms built into the orchard. So like a lot, like the swale, for example, is filled with wood chips at the top of a field and inoculated with wine caps. So that, I have got a couple beds like that. And then, but the wine caps, the cool thing about them is they really do spread. So especially if I got them all planted at the top of a hillside into a swale, I've been watching them pop up all like down that hill, which has been really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. Do you have a specific type of wood chips that's worked best for you, or is it just a mix from whatever you get locally?
I'm not that picky. I'm a really, use what you have, and some of it works better, some of it doesn't work as well. But over the long term, I think it's enough of a mix that it's sufficient. So we do have access to some wood chips here. We're working with the arborists around the park. So it's nice. I'm one of those, like, use what you have. If you have an easy source for straw, use that. If you've got wood chips, use wood chips. If it's expensive for you to get either one, you probably shouldn't be growing wine caps, then it may not be a good fit. So I'm all about like just doing what comes easy, working with the tide, so to speak. So for us, it made sense. We have a lot of water that we can collect. We have these swales that are much better filled than kind of sitting as a ditch. And we have access to wood chips. They need a soil builder, and wine caps are pretty low investment. So it was a good experiment that went well. So we just kept rolling with it.
Then with the wine caps, are you doing any additional irrigation of that, or is it just the natural rain that's then just filtering down through the swales and such?
Yeah, so it was really just strategic location.
Okay.
I have, when there is access water, I've got a couple like ponds that to get cleaned out, it's nice to pump them out. So like I would use that kind of spare water, for example, and just like pump them out into the swale. But overall, it's just really strategic location of where they do get all the surplus water from, the driveways and the rooftops and whatnot. So that was kind of the goal. So I don't irrigate anything on the farm really.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to set it up. And Ohio does have decent amount of water we typically get. So that also obviously helps tremendously. Joining me today is Dan from Steward, a mission-driven financial partner for farms across the U.S. Dan, value-added products are exploding right now, and especially farmers are really starting to see the profit in them. Why is that?
Well, value-added products give the margin that farmers need to be successful. Selling, raw material, raw product at the market price is really challenging. And so if you can have a value-added product branded and sold direct, it really provides viability to the farmer. The challenge is there's a lot of pieces that have to come together in order to be successful.
I know for us, taking a cucumber that we were getting $1 for, turning it into a $7 or $9 jar of pickles made a huge difference in our profit margin. Now, there's a lot of steps, though, that you said need to come together. What are those?
So the difference between value-added product is you're dealing with processing, packaging, labeling, direct sales. And so a lot of farms don't necessarily have the infrastructure, they don't have the marketing budget, they don't have all the pieces needed to not only create the products, but push them out into the market. And so we've been working with a lot of farms. We'll provide a loan for them to build out the equipment and infrastructure needed to make the value-added product, to process it and batch it and label it. And then also assist them with USDA grants, such as the Value-Added Producer Grant, which can then cover the marketing costs, the labor, softer costs that are hard to finance, but which the farm may not have themselves. So when we're looking at value-added products, it's the direction that we support the farms that we fund. That's the direction they should be going over time. More value-added products, better margin, more direct sales. But it takes a lot of alignment with the organization to do that. And you want to make sure there's not too much risk and too many resources expended on that. And so by balancing that with financing and grants and other opportunities that are out there, it can be a really powerful mix for farmers.
Like that 1-2 punch to push you over the edge and get you going. I think one of the things a lot of people get frustrated or held back by is a kitchen, those facilities. But you can do development even in your own kitchen as long as you're not selling that product. And then once you get that viability going, then you go find a shared use kitchen or do even build out your own with your help to take it to production level. Now, we've worked with some farms on this. Talk a little bit about that.
So one of the farms I enjoyed telling the story about most is Byler's Heritage Acres. Is an Amish farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. We connected them through a chef who had been buying from this farmer for years. He was selling milk through the co-op. The co-op went out of business. So him and other Amish farmers didn't have a market for their product. So Steward provided financing to do value-added processing for dairy to be able to sell butter and cream and yogurt, and also helped the farmer with a value-added producer grant to cover the labor and operational costs to set that up. And the chef who introduced us to this farmer then also purchased the final product and is selling that in his restaurants and at his shop. And so that was an example of taking a farmer who has a really great product, who's been cut out of the traditional market by intermediaries falling apart, which happens often, and taking it within their own hands to do a value-added product, to cut out the intermediaries and then get the margin that's needed for viability. Obviously, dairy is a very difficult business and you have to be in value add to make the numbers work.
Absolutely. If you're looking for a non-traditional, mission-driven financial partner who understands the business of regenerative agriculture, reach out to gosteward.com today. talk about the orchard. I know you talked about having some things planted underneath the trees. How is that set up?
Yeah, so we have a little bit of elevation change on the farm. I think overall, I mean, I could tell it's kind of like a long rectangle running westward, downward, at a slope.
Yep.
I think the total elevation change on the farm is like 80 feet. That kind of the length of that whole long rectangle. The drop is about 80-foot total. So it's slight enough to have meaning. So the orchard then is organized on like 2 acres, like in the middle of that rectangle is kind of where the barn and the house and the hoop house are. So those were kind of the nearest acres that I planted so we can really interact and see if that system's working. So all the rows are on contour. And that was definitely a big part of the design. And then each tree, there's kind of 2 orchard fields, and they're done a little bit differently just because the topography is a bit different. So the one field that's more kind of conventionally organized, it is just like 7 rows, and they're all on contour. And then between each tree is like a berry bush and a comfrey plant, and it's getting filled in with different types of crops like sorrel, etc. And then I do like alley crops between all those rows of annuals. And then like all those rows can have access, for the poultry to like run in between seasonally. So I have in that field, like that's the organization there. So depending on the season, like I'll bring in cardboard and wood chips to kind of lay down seasonal paths and sheet mulch and bring in organic matter that way. Where I've done annual crops, then I'll, toss in some cover crop seeds and go like really heavy on the sunflowers. So I've got a beautiful stand of cover crops with really tall sunflowers. And then we could have some like pick your own flowers for a season, and kind of make your money back on those cover crops a little. And that field has been working great. I like that. Everything about it has been working great. I think like tweaking, the maybe just a little bit of the spacing. I'm not very detail oriented, but in hindsight, it should have been just to really measure, what's the width of my tractor? What is that turnaround here and there, just to really make sure that it flows so smoothly. The other field is up high, and it's a little messier just because the topography is a little wilder. And it was our first field, so it was also the one that we made more mistakes on. But there we have more pear trees also. And so with those, we organize them like each one has its own guild. So it really does have like, like a gooseberry and a comfrey and an oregano and a sorrel and a chives and a whatever and horseradish. And so it's really meant to have like no grass and no rows and just be like sheet mulch the whole time. And that's been working pretty well actually too.
You're saying that that whole orchard is sheet mulch. There's no like annuals between the rows?
Not so much anymore. Yeah. And there are still areas kind of the first half of that field is as you described. Like the second half of that field, that definitely still has like a lot more grassy pathways and things like that. But the rows themselves, I really have phased out the annual production there more or less. So it's like strawberries and asparagus mixed together, and some grass kind of coming back through, but overall, it's really transitioned nicely to kind of just be orchard.
Very nice. Very nice. Let's talk about the ducks. Actually, when I started farming, 18 years ago now, the first thing I got was ducks. So, and we started with Muscovy ducks. We moved to some runners. We actually did a fair number of different types. What type of ducks do you use?
We use Muscovies as well. And we had also the Pekin ducks, and we had, what were those called? They're almost like a hybrid, but those like brown, I even forget the proper name for them. They were like out of a catalog, like a hybrid, kind of like a Pekin and a runner mix. And,
yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And they're supposed to lay more eggs.
Yeah, yep, for sure. And they did. And it was interesting to see. And, I would like to get runner ducks too, and like compare those in the batch. Because I really see how different ducks, like they really have different value, and that's it's like same for the pigs, right? Like one pig won't fit a different farm. And so they all kind of have their strengths. The Muscovies were the best in that they were the quietest.
Yes.
that made all the difference for me mentally. But the fact that they don't really lay any eggs in the winter, you really kind of like lose some of that value. The Peking ducks were amazing layers, the biggest eggs, but they are so dang loud and messy. They like, the anxiety never quit with them. So they're just really hard to handle in large numbers unless you have like, headphones on all the time. Like you gotta prepare for that piece. Because you want to go outside, it's quiet, right? That romantic morning chores, but then there's like a pile of like anxious ducks like quacking in your face. Like, it's just not a nice way to start the day, I didn't think. So there's but they did lay through the winter, and their eggs were great. So there's kind of value to all of them, depending on what fits the situation, but so I would definitely do them again, probably not like, actually, I mean, my plan is to do them again this year. I just haven't ordered them yet.
Processing them is the hard thing. I mean, there are people out there that have dialed it in and they can pick a duck and it looks beautiful, but that's just wasn't my strength. So that was one of the reasons we tried to go Muscovies, because they're supposedly a little bit easier to pick, but I still found they weren't as easy as chickens are literally like dunk them in that water and they are clean.
They're clean. Yeah, it's true. It was a big difference. And that was something we really tried to hone over the course of a couple of years of like really improving that system. But even our best version was still really labor intensive. So but at the end of the day, what I decided is like the meat ducks were great, but I really liked raising them for eggs. So in that case, it's a bit different, and I don't mind butchering a few birds at the end of their life, like, and in that way, right? It's a little different, but when it's income dependent and you can't have a feather in there, they were definitely are labor intensive. So if you live close to a processor, and kind of like that's the system, or you're really investing in poultry and you're going to have like the state of the art equipment.
Correct.
You kind of just have to make your choices. And at the end of the day, you got to like invest in whatever system you want to succeed with commercially. So you can't do them all, right? So you really kind of have to pick which system you're going to invest in.
Correct. Now with the ducks, how are you handling them? Do you have like chicken tractors? Do you have a house? Do you have?
For all of our animals, we've our big factor here is that our farm sits on a ridge, and we get really strong winds coming up our big open field. And that is something we struggle with. So whatever shelters we had to design, like really had to withstand some extreme winds. So we went through a couple models that, flew away into the forest or whatnot. So now we have they're kind of like a hoop house, but with a metal like steel frame at the bottom, and they're obviously like smaller. And I just put like a couple, like 2 wheels on the back, and so I can like pick up the front, and roll them forward. And it's like 4 hoops. There may be like what are they? I think I should know off the top of my head, like 10 by 12 is I think what their footprint is. And then we can just drape plastic over the top, put some cut up crates for nesting boxes on the back wall. And then for the ducks, they have fewer predators than chickens too, so I didn't need them to be so secure. And because they are so messy and they don't need to go up high, I really didn't even have a floor in their shelter. I would just have the crates, and I try to keep like just a clean straw for the egg laying area. But that's really all they needed. And I had like an out of water that I had like gravity fed, and from a tank sitting up high. And I pastured. I just moved them around from row to row, from one orchard field to the next, and so on.
Gotcha. Very cool. Let's move on to the pigs. What breeds have been working well for you? Because I know you mentioned breeds can be different depending on the farm.
I wanted something that, so I started with the pigs. My kids were still little and I wanted them to get into it. And we looked around at different things, and we kind of settled on this one farm that we've been working with, and it's been really great. They raise and like breed certified Idaho pastured pigs. And we just take all their feeders, which it works great. So the Idaho pastured pigs are crossed between 3 heritage varieties like Berkshire, Duroc, and Cooney, which makes for a low impact, like low feed, really docile, like friendly pigs. They don't finish out maybe quite as large as some of the commercial hogs do, but I have gotten them live weight to like 325 or so. But we do get the feeder pigs, and there's a lot of genetic diversity, which is a strength, but then commercially speaking, some of the pigs end up a little smaller at the end of the season. So there's pluses and minuses, like depending on what you're doing, but they are not aggressive at all. They're really trainable. They're very hardy in the cold, in the dry, in the hot, like in all of it. They're very hardy pigs. They don't take as much feed to finish out, to grow, to put on the weight. They don't root as much, so they don't damage the fields as much. And they put on weight just on grass. Better than others. So we found like a lot of pluses to them. And at the end of the day, like the meat is just outstanding.
Now, are these more of an established line, or is this something where you're constantly making sure that the parent breeding stock of these specific types and constantly getting the animals out of that?
No, so this is like, I knew again, like, am I going to get into this for like the long haul? Then I'm going to have to get really good on the breeding side. We just weren't ready to invest in that infrastructure. So the way I have it set up is that this farm that we work with, 45-minute drive away, that's on them, and they're amazing at it, and they do it really well. And they have the piglets weaned at only like at 12 weeks. Which is great. And then we just pick them up and raise them to the finish.
Perfect. Yeah. Gotcha. So they made it work good for you. So it sounds like it's got the best of all three of those varieties kind of mixed together then.
That's the idea. I mean, surely I can tell sometimes when like there's a particular gene now, after several years, you're kind of like, those ones, that curly tail is going to be like extra hard to put on the trailer or something. You can just tell. But that's how it happens with everybody and everything, right? Somebody's got to have extra personality. So, but generally speaking, we love them. They're really great.
Cool. Now the apple orchard that you're doing for cider, are those specific cider varieties? And are you planning on doing that as a fresh cider, apple cider vinegar, or like even a cider ferment?
Yeah, hard cider is definitely the goal. And that's more on my husband's side. Jimmy is he's on the cider side. That's his jam. He's good at it. That's what he does. And although he's pretty humble about it, so I talk him up way more than he'd let me. But we grow a wide variety of cider apples, and part of that was just to see what would grow well for us here. And then again, like as we were planting the rest of the acreage, after the pigs are there, then we'll be way more confident about how to really like select for particular varieties. But we found a couple of nurseries we really like working with, and the trees we get from them are really, fantastic. But even within that, we see that some varieties are just growing better, right, than others. So now it's kind of like, I'll definitely never get any of those again. Whether it's a rootstock or a fruit, like we could just see what's not easy, right? Like maybe we could do it better, but why not just go with what's working easy? And in that way, we're not really picky. It'd be great if I could have this particular apple or that, but hey, if it's something else, then we're open to it. And some of these we are getting they're like good for cider and good fresh eating apples. We'd love to eat fresh apples, but you're not going to be like your grade A perfect like Granny Smiths or anything like that.
And what varieties have those been?
Oh, I mean, anything from like Black Oxford to like Liberty and Gold Rush, like Wine Sap, Yellow Transparent. Yeah, like even some of those early varieties, just to see if we could make some applesauce, in the summer. To some of those like really late varieties that, let you store through the winter. There's also some like pear trees mixed in. Cool. I wouldn't mind a good perry. And right now we're still like, we're buying apples from Northeast Ohio, just from the orchards we work with. And in the fall, like we'll just do a pressing just to kind of, hone that craft and keep pressing the apples. And it's great because, on our farm, like all those spent apples, I definitely like make a batch of vinegar with that. Right. But, we're not commercially licensed, so I can't sell that. But I can also like share those spent apples with the pigs in the fall, and
Correct.
the meat is even more outstanding in that way. So it's just kind of like building those systems, and the cider like fits really well into it. This farm historically at one point, there many years ago, there was an orchard here. So I feel like that's a good sign, that it was fruitful here before. So it fits great into that timeline, and it just kind of fits great with the permaculture approach to really doing perennial agriculture. And as far as making a farm profitable, you can sell apples, but when you sell a glass of hard cider, you're really paying that up, paying that much more for those apple trees. So I think in a lot of ways, it makes sense to do something like that.
Absolutely. Very cool. I think that's all the questions I had. Did you have anything else you wanted to share about the farm or the systems or how you've got it set up?
I mean, as far as the farm goes, it's a work in progress. Yeah, we definitely did the really big design, and I definitely feel more confident about it now than I even did then, that it was the right move and the right approach to design the landscape, using that approach, using the permaculture design system. And now it's a lot of work on the front end, but I really do see how it's becoming established and a little bit more self-regulated. And it's been a really, really fun process to integrate, the shiitakes into the system, and the apple trees and the pigs. It's really fun how there's so much diversity. It never gets boring. And if something's failing, you don't get too saddened by it, because right there next to it, you see something that's working really well. So I really like that part about it.
Yeah. Is there anything you would have changed about the design now that you've been working with it for a while?
Yeah, I think in our first orchard field, I would have done more soil prep. I mean, I'm still there's more weed pressure than there ought to be. And I know that's just because I was just kind of clumsy with it in the beginning, and I just really wanted to hurry up and get those trees in, and hurry up and get things going and growing. And and then so in the end, you kind of give yourself a little bit more work. So the more I'm still out there weeding, thinking, gosh, I really could have done something about that, but what are you gonna do?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and super excited to see everything working out for you, and especially the farm store, because that's one thing I'm super passionate about, is more, access to local food that is kind of cooperative. So I'm glad to see that. But again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.